If there is one single thing that is guaranteed to get attention to anything it's involved with, it's cheating. Lately, there has been a cheating scandal in chess, a cheating scandal in fishing, and if I reflect back to the 9 years I spent hosting sports talk radio, there was never a bigger topic of conversation in that industry than steroids in baseball, which, of course, is also cheating. Lately, the poker world has been rocked by that possibility. But this situation is different because, unlike Mike Postle, that's really all it is a possibility. But how likely is it that cheating actually happened? For that, we bring in the most frequent contributor that this vlog has had. Chad Holloway of Poker News has been covering the biggest stories in poker for as long as I can remember being involved in poker, and he joins us now. Chad, is it safe to say that this story is the biggest thing that you've covered since you've been covering news and poker?
It's definitely the biggest story of 2022 and one of the biggest stories of poker of all time, considering it all sprung really from one single hand and has only grown since then. It ranks up there amongst the wildest and biggest stories I've ever covered, that's for sure.
And you had Robbie J. DeLue on the Poker News podcast. And I listened to that interview, and I will say I thought she came off fairly well. I listened to it, and I thought there's still a chance that she could be bluffing, but there's also a decent chance that what she's telling is indeed the truth. And I think most people have heard a lot of what she has had to say regarding her side of this by now. But the amazing part was, it was probably the day after I heard that interview that you did on the Poker News podcast that the news came out that, okay, now we have discovered that there is a guy stealing chips off Robbie's stack. And it just so happened to take place directly after this hand. I saw a meme, and I generally don't love memes, but it was the Dos Equis guy. And he said, I don't usually steal chips, but when I do it after the most infamous hand in poker history, and I do it on camera. I mean, are you kidding me with this timing? So after you saw that, did that sway your opinion at all in terms of the percentage likelihood that cheating was occurring here?
Oh, absolutely, like so many others. So before that happened, when it was just between Garrett and Robbie, there were a lot of people who were upset with Garrett, thinking, oh, he took his ball and went home, so to speak, that he's a sore loser. You can't just say somebody's cheating. You got to offer a little bit more than that. And I think I was on board in that thinking as well. I always said, like, I'm going to presume she's innocent unless you can give me a theory that it also addresses how she cheated and with who. Because if she was cheating, it meant she likely was going to have to be cheating with somebody from the Hustler Casino team. And that question remained unanswered for basically a week. And that's when you've seen the poker sympathy with Robbie, so to speak. But then, as you said, once it came out that this Hustler Casino Live employee, his name is Brian, that he was stealing chips, well, all of a sudden we have at least a plausible theory as to who and possibly how, because this employee had access to information like hole cards. Now, there isn't evidence or proof quite yet. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but there's no hard proof as of yet. But it still opened up that possibility. And that's what I think changed a lot of people's minds was, okay, if you have an employee who is stealing chips, 15,000, is he just stealing that as a one-off? Or is he thinking he's do that because he's involved somehow and he was supposed to receive a payment and realized, oh, I might not get paid. Let me just help myself.
I just can't get over the fact that this guy is trying to say that he just randomly stole these chips and it just happened to be from her right after this happened. That's one of the most ridiculous parts of it. It's like, so you're telling me that out of all the times and out of all the players in the history of poker you could possibly try to steal from, you're going to pick this exact instance to do it when there's cheating allegations. And oh, by the way, you happen to be in an office very close to where the whole cards could be seen. That's what you're saying, right? That's what you're trying to sell us.
Right about that, right? That's correct. That's your story.
I just can't get over that. And reports coming out that he moved a filing cabinet so he could get in view of the whole cards. And then we also find out that this Brian character does have multiple criminal offenses on his record. So that also leads me to believe that something could indeed be going on here. And by the way, if someone did just happen to do this and there was nothing else going on, are they really going to write some lengthy Instagram DM apology like Brian apparently did, that also includes him telling Robbie how he believes her and how he's ripping on Garrett and calling him a crybaby? That's really how this is going to go. If he's totally innocent and didn't do this, that's really how this would be carried out. I just have a hard time buying into that.
I think you make a good point about him having a record, and it begs the question of how did he get this job? How did he get this position where he has access to that confidential information? Was Hustler Casino Live not doing a background check and things like that? From what I understand, it was maybe this Brian was longtime friends with some of the producers or the shot callers, if you will, so got the position in that regard. And that's not a good thing, especially when you're a live stream who last year before launch said you're taking security very seriously, that it's going to be paramount in your strategy, and coming off the heels of what happened at Stones in the Mike Postle situation. So the fact that somebody with that sort of record got into this position just leaves one scratching their head. And then, as you mentioned, this direct message that Robbie released that is allegedly from Brian, that turned off a lot of people, I think. Like, come on, is this for real? And if you do look, I think it was Alan Kessler that pointed out, to his credit, when you're looking at written statements, and I see this a lot as somebody who deals with them, you can oftentimes pick up on things that people do, words that they spell wrong, languages that, the language that they use, things like that. And Alan Kessler noted that in a past thing that Robbie J. Lou had written, she wrote wouldn't not, like a double negative, very identifiable, not something that happens to a lot of people. I've never really seen it before. And then in the statement that Brian apparently wrote, it says in one spot, wouldn't not. And so is it a coincidence? Possibly. I guess that possibility exists there, but it's also just one of those language things like, come on, is this the same person writing this, or is it really two different people? Now, as I said, am going to do what we should as a society and say, innocent until proven guilty. I know that's not always the case in the court of public opinion, but I'm definitely, at one point I was 80+% confident that she had no wrongdoing. And now for me, it's, closer back to that 50-50. I just really don't know. There's a lot of things that lead me to believe yes, a lot of things that are like, no. And that's what's, I think that it's that mentality that has captured the attention of the poker world, because we just don't know. And it just keeps getting crazier and crazier.
I enjoy what you said about looking into every detail and trying to get to the truth, because the full truth may never come out. Chad's going to love this analogy because Chad is one of like the 6 guys that I told about this like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I had a girlfriend who had broken up with me and I was not exactly loving that situation. And then I had a friend of mine who was trying to act like he was actually being a friend to me during this whole situation. And I started to suspect that he was then hooking up with this chick. And making it look like he wasn't. And eventually I just saw so many pieces of evidence that pointed to it, even though I really didn't know. I decided to bluff him and tell me that someone had told me this, and he basically folded, for lack of a better term, and admitted to it, but no one had told me a damn thing. I just bluffed him. Anyway, so sometimes you have to look through the situation like that. And I also want to point out, with regards to this DM from this Brian to Robbie, yes, whenever someone sends you a lengthy DM apologizing for stealing thousands of dollars from you, isn't it only natural for your first response to be, can you go on Joey Ingram's podcast? Not like, yeah, why'd you do this? Are you kidding me? You ruined my life. You screwed this up. No, can you get on and talk to Joey Ingram? I mean, really, come on now.
It's crazy. And we haven't seen the last of it, as I said. That's why it keeps getting crazier and crazier. Hustler Casino Live is doing an investigation. We do anticipate more information coming out. over this past weekend. Garrett Adelstein, who's been relatively quiet since he left that live stream and this all happened. He's released a few bits and pieces, but he really gave us a lot of detail on a 2+2 forum over the weekend, where he laid out a lot of his thoughts, not necessarily clear proof, but a lot of circumstantial evidence. And he really named some names and just laid it out there of what he thinks may have happened, and also alludes to a lot of inconsistencies with this entire story, especially with Robbie Jade Lou and a lot of the things that she's said and done. And it is those inconsistencies that I think have planted seeds of doubt amongst many people. And those seeds are starting to take root and grow for those who used to be doubters, and then have served as further evidence for those who have thought she was guilty from the get-go.
Yeah. And I think that going back to one of the first things that happened, I don't know how you feel, but I always felt that her giving the money back right afterwards was more of an admission of guilt than a admission of not guilt, for lack of a better word. Because if you had won a huge hand and you didn't do anything wrong, I just don't see any way in the world you're ever giving the money back. It's poker. That's the whole point, is to win money. But if you did cheat and you could see some sort of damage coming and an issue is kind of snowballing, and maybe giving the money back might help limit the damage, then maybe you'd give it back. So I always felt that that was an indication of guilt, as of course was the fact that she kept changing her story. She, in the middle of the hand, said, "I thought I had a 3." When she, after the hand, she said she thought he had 3. When in the middle of the hand, she said she didn't have, she knew she didn't have a 3. So all these inconsistencies, along with the written ones that you point out, which is also a good observation, lead me to even a more drastic position than you. I mean, see, you're kind of where I was when I was listening to your interview. You said 50-50, and that's kind of always where I was exactly 50-50. I had a lot of people tell me, "Oh, no way. There's no way she cheated this chick. There's no way it could possibly happen." And I said, I don't know about that. I think it might, maybe it could have, but I'm more the other way now. I'm more 80% yes at this point, because before, I always looked at this situation as one that didn't make sense, meaning it just didn't make sense for anyone that we knew was involved with Hustler Casino Live, this insanely successful poker live stream, to be involved with cheating. But when you look at the fact that, yes, maybe there was a lowly paid guy that did one of the lowest paid jobs there, he got bitter. He has a criminal record. He could be involved. That's, to me, finally something that makes sense as to how this could happen. Now, I still wouldn't have expected someone in Robbie's position to then want to cheat and go with it, given how rich she and her husband appear to be. But I've been surprised by that sort of thing before. So that new development, I think, put me more in the 80% yes range compared to the 50-50 where I'd been most of the time.
Look, I think this only ends really one of two ways. Obviously, she did cheat or didn't cheat. If she didn't cheat, it is just this strange series of events where she played this hand extremely, extremely off the cuff, unconventionally and suspiciously. It just so happens, coincidentally, that this Brian guy was stealing, and that Garrett just got overly suspicious. I mean, that possibility does exist. It seems more far-fetched now than it did previously. But on the other side is, if there was cheating, which a lot of people think there was, it's not, in my opinion, going to be just Robbie Jade Lou who would be involved. We'd have to learn who helped her. This Brian guy, obviously forefront among them in a lot of people's minds. But I just personally think that if there was cheating, it's going to go a lot deeper than just those two, that there would be others involved, be them other players in some of these games, be them other people working with Hustler Casino Live. And that is what's going to be very interesting. That if that is the case, how do we get there? How do we discover all this? What will the investigation yield, given it is being led by Hustler Casino Live? I don't know the answer to that. I'm waiting to see. Like, every day is bringing seemingly a new development in this entire saga. one thing's for sure, Garrett seems convinced that there was wrongdoing, that there was cheating. I've spoken to a lot of other people who have some intimate knowledge about the situation and in the operation of Hustler Casino Live who feel the same way. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to remain patient and as neutral as possible. You know, given what I do for a living with poker news, I'm trying not to lean too heavily one way or the other, but just take the facts as they're presented to us. But that's the challenge, as you know, as a newsman and journalist yourself, is sometimes figuring out what are actually facts and what's relevant is not always easy, especially in a case like this.
Your interview with her was one of the few interviews that she's done, likely due to your reputation in the poker world of being the guy to go to on this sort of thing. When you think back on that conversation, was there any points that she made that really stood out in terms of, okay, that makes it tough to believe she was cheating? Or are there anything that she said that you look back at and think that's a little weird the way she put it?
I actually found after my conversation, like you mentioned earlier, leaving thinking, I was pretty impressed. She was very well spoken. She made a lot of good points. Unlike you, I understand where you were coming from. I, though, seen the paying back of the money, yes, it could be an admission of guilt, but I think there was an equal chance of a situation of, why are you angry? What's going on right now? I just want to have fun and play poker. If I give you the money back, can we just go back to having fun and playing poker? And if somebody was innocent, not cheating, really didn't care about the money, then I could see that as a plausible situation. And that's kind of what she said. So I thought, okay, maybe that's the case. I can see somebody getting confused about thinking they had Jack 3 and playing a hand like that. I know Daniel Negreanu has harped on that he's seen that out of relatively new players. I've seen it on my time working for the Mid-States Poker Tour, just things like that. So I didn't find that as shocking. So a lot of that kind of stuff did add up to me. And then it was pretty straightforward. I tried to ask some pretty blunt questions, try to have a civil conversation. And of course, this was all before the Brian stuff came out, that he was stealing chips and things like that. I really wish I could have interviewed her with that knowledge. I did message her after it broke, asking her, if she had a statement that she would like to share. And she did provide me with one that I was able to tweet out. But yeah, and there wasn't really anything too shocking. But then again, I interviewed her about a week after everything went down. So if let's just say she had time to prepare, these questions I was asking her really weren't anything she hadn't heard before. So it kind of, if there was wrongdoing and she needed to get a story straight, she would have had time. But I think a lot of people, and myself included, felt she was fairly genuine in that interview. She came across better than I expected. So
I agree. I thought she did as well. And it's unfortunate for her that this other news came out. But to me, it's just way more than a coincidence. The fact that he would just happen to pick her stack at that exact moment, to me, is fairly damning evidence that something was going on here, which to me, the whole time, there seemed to be a lot of the evidence. Going back to the mere fact that she played the Jack 4 offsuit. I mean, that's just not something you do if you're a winning poker player and trying to actually get in. Not saying that she is necessarily winning, but she knows how to play. Getting involved with that hand in the first place, to me, was fishy. And the way it was played was obviously one of the most ridiculous hands that's ever happened in the history of poker, and one that will be analyzed interminably until we ultimately know more about this, which maybe we will in the coming weeks or months. The other thing that I can't help but think too is that this is going to be like this is going to ultimately make Hustler Casino Live more popular than it's ever been. I can't help but think that. It's kind of like Tylenol in 1982 when they had that scandal. It turned out like a couple of people died when taking it, but it was just like a few actual pills that were tampered with and had nothing to do with the overall product. So there was like this publicity they got, but ultimately it was an all pub is good pub situation. They blew up. I kind of think that's going to happen here. Like, I kind of think you're going to get more people that weren't watching this that are going to start watching in the future. But who knows? We'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and however it plays out, there's going to be some lessons to learn, right? So if there is cheating, if there was malfeasance, it's going to open up this question about live streams and what we as an industry need to do to protect them. Are they even feasible after what happened with Paso? What would be happening with this case? You know, it would open up this big discussion on live stream security, not only security, but also regulation almost. Like, who is watching over these streams? Are we just trusting the people who are involved in running them? Because look what's happened when that is the case. You know, I don't think these gaming entities are really getting too involved. So that would be a lesson to be learned. On the flip side of things, though, if Robbie Jade Lou is innocent and that possibility does exist, we would have to take a good, long, hard look at ourselves of, is this how we treat somebody who was innocent, a recreational player who should have been celebrated for the call, something that could have helped bring more recreational women into the game, but instead this is how the industry reacted as a whole. That certainly wouldn't be a good look either. Now, again, I'm not saying that we should have done that. There's reasons to be suspicious, clearly, and that's just what makes this whole situation crazy. That on top of mainstream media picking it up, like you said at the top of this, the cheating scandal with chess, just to me supercharged the whole cheating issue in the mind of the mainstream public. And then you got the double whammy of this poker story we've been discussing, and then the cheating incident in the fishing world. So it was just really blew up. It was the spark, that static spark. And once this took a life of its own, it just grew beyond the poker world. Not a lot of stories do that, but this one certainly has.
By the way, before we wrap this thing up, I got to say I appreciate you guys on the Poker News podcast getting a plug in for the PEPPERMILL PokerPALOOZA, which is coming up at the end of October. This is basically the tournament series that has taken over for Run It Up Reno, what was formerly known as. And I think it's going to be huge. I mean, we'll see how huge it's going to be, but hopefully you guys get a chance to check that out, because isn't it safe to say, like, you guys seem to have had the understanding and the realization that the tournament series that are held at PEPPERMILL are among the most fun in the poker world, right? Isn't that a good way of describing them?
Yeah, without a doubt. It became my working vacation, if you will, for many years. I loved going up there, had fun. The action was great. The tournaments, the town, just the property as a whole. Some of my best memories being in the poker industry have taken place at the PEPPERMILL, without a doubt. And I'm looking forward to making many more, because Mike Nelson and his crew do a great job up there. And of course, the poker world can get a good look at that through your vlogs. That's one of the reasons I've always enjoyed it, is because, well, I can't always be in Reno, I can at least live vicariously through you and your adventures.
Appreciate that. And I appreciate anyone that gets up to the PEPPERMILL PokerPALOOZA. 20% off rooms, promo code Deech. There's a link in the description below. That's coming up at the end of October. And it'll be the first tournament that I've played in since probably 2018 or so, when I jump in that mystery bounty and try to win that damn thing and vlog it. So that'll be fun too. But anyway, Chad Holloway, you can always follow him on Twitter for the latest news in the poker world, and listen to the Poker News podcast. It's one of my go-tos. As you know from watching this channel, I'm a podcast addict, and that's one that I always go to. Really appreciate taking the time, Chad, and hopefully this situation finally gets resolved and can have some resolution to it. But you've been doing a great job covering it throughout as it goes.
I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. And like so many others, I just can't wait to see how this story plays out.